Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Chloe Feng. Here's a look at tonight's top stories. A lack of nominations crushes the Democratic Party's hopes of running in the district council polls, while the Roundtable group fields only one candidate. The government launches a one-stop talent office as it defends its recruitment drive. And hospitals in Gaza voice concern over safety as Israel escalates its offensive against Hamas. The Registration and Electoral Office has received 400 entries for the district council elections as the nomination period ended at 5 p.m. But the Democratic Party will not be taking part in the race after failing to secure enough nominations. Chairman Lo King-hei and Vice Chairwoman Bonnie Ng were among 6 aspirants from the city's oldest opposition party. Lo conceded today that none of them could secure 3 nominations from so-called district committees. He pledged to continue serving the public and maintain a presence in the community. Also suffering a setback was veteran lawmaker Michael Tin, whose Roundtable group only mustered enough nominations for 1 candidate. 4 others had to drop out despite doorstepping 241 district-level committee members in the past 5 days. Tin said 200 members did not answer the door, while 15 others simply turned them away. Labour Chief Chloe Feng says Hong Kong's talent drive has been successful and diversified. Over 20% of the applicants were considered as overseas talent, even though they were originally from the mainland.
Labour Chief Chloe Feng has responded to skepticism over the city's talent quest, saying it has been very successful with a significant number of overseas applicants.
If you look at the top talent pass scheme, the statistics, the figures from the past 9 months, if you count those, they are coming from outside the mainland, i.e. either they studied overseas or they came from overseas. It accounted for around 20%. They might be mainlanders, but they are overseas graduates. Some of them worked in overseas territories.
Obviously, Hong Kong is an international city. I think we need not only, of course, talents from the mainland. They are always welcome, but I think we need to also promote ourselves to the talents around the world so we can get a good mix.
2, 3.
Their remarks came as the government launched its Talent Engage office to lure skilled people to offset the brain drain. The office will provide a one-stop service to help those who are chosen to settle down in Hong Kong.
I have every confidence that together with our various targeted measures, Hong Kong Talent Engage Office will help strengthen our city's status as an international talent hub and in turn contribute to the motherland's high-quality development.
Chan said in the past 9 months, the government received 160,000 applications for its various talent schemes. Over 100,000 were approved and around 60,000 are already in Hong Kong, exceeding last year's target of around 30,000.
The government says it will begin resuming land for the northern metropolis in or before 2027. Development Chief Bernadette Lin is confident of financing land resumption in the coming 5 years. Macy Mark reports.
The government plans to develop 30,000 hectares of land in new territories for the ambitious Northern Metropolis project. Secretary for Development Bernadette Lin disclosed that 10% of the area, or 3,000 hectares, will be earmarked to build 500,000 units. She did not mention the cost, but with the deficit expected to increase this year, Lin was asked whether the government has sufficient cash to compensate owners for land resumed in or before the target date of 2027. Lin said she is confident of settling compensation for 700 hectares within 5 years. The previous government had proposed to protect 2,000 hectares of wetland, but there are now fears that part of the area may be developed. Lin said the plan was not a promise, but a rough draft. She added some wetland areas will be used to develop the Santin Technopole in the northern metropolis.
When the hills present for us some constraint, then inevitably we have to make the choice of going into some of the wetland. But that doesn't mean that we are going to erode the quality of our wetland systems. Through active measures, we will be able to bring about quality wetlands.
The government also said 3 wetland parks will be developed in phases, with more details announced next year. Maisie Mock, HKIBC.
The government has speeded up the process of dismissing civil servants whose job performance is below standard. But some lawmakers are skeptical, saying it is unfair. Janice Yu tells us more.
Civil Service Secretary Ingrid Yang revealed that in the past 5 years, 1,124 civil servants were punished for serious misconduct, and 1,195 others were penalized for less serious offenses. The figures included 195 who were dismissed. Last year, 60 were sacked, double the yearly average of 30. In the past, the process to dismiss a civil servant whose work performance was not up to standard took 20 months. But from last month, it was cut to 10 months by leaving the final decision to the employee's final department head instead of including all previous ones. Lawmaker Chow Siu-chung asked whether this was fair, as only one officer would decide.
Can you improve the overall appraisal system to make it more objective? Civil servants are worried that you will rely too much on the views of the appraising officer or the direct supervisor.
Lawmaker Dennis Leung asked if civil servants will be able to evaluate the performance of their superiors.
Understand that in the private sector there is so-called 360-degree appraisal. We have no intention to go down this route because that will lengthen the appraisal period.
Young added that overall civil service performance has improved as the number of sacked workers was only a small proportion. Janice Yu, HKIBC.
Overseas, Israel has stepped up its offensive in the Gaza Strip, with war planes hitting more than 600 targets. The Palestinian death toll exceeded 8,000 as doctors expressed fears about the safety of patients and others taking refuge in hospitals.
There was panic at Al-Quds Hospital in Gaza City as Israel bombed nearby areas. Israel had ordered the hospital to be evacuated, but doctors said it was impossible to move the patients out. According to the Palestinian Red Crescent, the airstrikes damaged some parts of the building, where about 14,000 people had sought shelter. Israeli tanks, meanwhile, continued to pound targets in Gaza as soldiers clashed with Hamas fighters. Israel said its troops killed dozens of Hamas members who barricaded themselves inside buildings. After 3 weeks of bombardment, hundreds of thousands of Palestinians have lost their homes. They also face starvation and disease as Israel cut off vital supplies to the enclave. Hamas offered to free all civilian hostages in return for a 5-day cessation of hostilities so that more assistance and fuel can reach Gaza. 33 trucks carrying emergency supplies entered Gaza yesterday, the most since aid began to trickle in from the Egyptian side of the border. So far, 117 lorries have been allowed in. Relief officials say this is barely enough to sustain the 2.3 million trapped Palestinians. Hundreds of trucks used to cross into Gaza before the conflict began. Over 8,000 Palestinians have been killed in the airstrikes, which were launched after Hamas fighters burst into Israel earlier this month and killed 1,400 people.
HSBC is to buy back $3 billion worth of shares after announcing that its third quarter pre-tax profit more than doubled from a year ago. Europe's biggest bank made $7.7 billion in the 3 months ending in September, but the market was expecting a profit of over $8 billion. HSBC says costs this year will increase by up to 5% compared with its earlier forecast of 3%. It's considering bigger bonuses for bankers in the final quarter. HSBC shares closed 1.5% lower in Hong Kong. And now let's take a look at the markets. The Hang Seng Index closed almost flat. Top 10 active stocks track Tencent up $2.60, Xiaomi up 80 cents, and Alibaba down 55 cents. SMIC up $1.40, Kuaishou down $1.95, Wuxi Bio up $2.75. Forex trading against Hong Kong dollar, the euro is at 8.28. British pound at 9.48, Australian dollar at 4.98. Moving on to the UK market, the London FTSE is currently up by 50 points. And finally, onto the weather now. It will be mainly fine and dry tomorrow. Temperatures will range between 24 and 29 degrees. Similar conditions for the following couple of days. And that is our main news for Monday night. Join us for more news at 11. I'm Chloe Feng. Good night.